Beginning from today, we will start our class on the 37 practices of Bodhisattva on the part of training in meditative concentration. Yesterday, we had covered on diligence, the practice of diligence, and the day before on patience. We had started, or I requested you to start making observation of your own aggression or the practice of patience for 100 days. I encourage you to make a chart, the subject, which is ourselves, and then the object of our aggression, and what was the behavior of that aggression. So I really want you to make notes of that. You can probably print out the chart and then write it down. Beginning from midnight today, we will start meditation. Not only that we will study meditation, today we will start the practice of meditation. The meditative concentration is really important. It is not something that we should only pay lip service. So from today, 12 a.m., I hope all of you could turn off your cell phone for 3 to 7 days. I understand that if you turn off your cell phone, your family and friends won't be able to reach you. So it would be the best for you to send out a message saying that you would be in retreat for 3 to 7 days, so you won't be reached by your cell phone because your phones will be off. This is just to prevent you from getting distracted. I hope that you would listen to my instruction. If you really couldn't follow my instruction, then beginning from tomorrow, we will cover on the part of wisdom. Then you don't have to show up to the class if you don't listen to my instructions. If you can't even turn off your phones for 3 days, then what's the point of the Dharma? What's the point of listening to the Dharma? I understand some Khenpos and Khenmos and some of the management team of certain departments won't be able to turn off their phones. You probably have lots of things to deal with other than those. Then the rest of you should definitely turn off your phones for 3 to 7 days. You could tell your family members and your friends that you would be in a retreat. I'm sure they will understand it. This is my request. Beginning from today at midnight, 12 a.m., turn off your phone. Regarding the matter of cell phones, I think the Chinese Sangha are not doing the best. Maybe after a period of time, we need to turn in our cell phones for a period of time. And on every Sunday, you can get your phone back for a day. We had advocated this for the first half of the year, and it was so all the Sangha were volunteered to turn in their phones for a week and to get back their phone on Sundays. Each and every class at that time had a large case to keep everyone's phone in there. Some of the Lamas and Jomos, especially the Lamas classes, already started to hand in their phones. And I think over here, for the Chinese Sangha, we need to also adapt that rule. Some of your family members and friends, if they would get concerned, if they couldn't get connected with you or they couldn't communicate to you, then you should probably tell them in advance that your phone will be off for a period of time. Today we will talk about meditation. We will talk about the meditation of shamatha and vipassana. For the practice of shamatha and vipassana practice, you can't bring your phone. Other than people with really important staffing positions, I think other than that, you could definitely turn off your phone. This is the first aspect, the prerequisite to practice meditation. And this could be seen as a little exam I give you. Let's see who's going to make lots of phone calls after class today. If you really couldn't turn off your phone, then I think it would be the best for you not to listen to classes for a period of time. Larangar is a place that is for practitioners, so it is necessary to maintain this container as a quiet practice place. If you were to chatter every day, to simply engage in frivolous speech every day, I think it's rather quite meaningless and you're squandering your life. Back in the 80s and 70s, people would consider that television is a Mara that distracts the practitioners. But nowadays, whenever we look at the cell phone, indeed, it has destroyed our virtuous roots and stopped us from accumulate meritorious roots. Beginning from tomorrow, for 7 days, the Chinese Sangha over here will engage in diligent and will engage in quiet practice of meditation. Before midnight tonight, you can deal with all your personal matters. For the Tibetan monastics, they would usually have the Tok Day, the Tok offering day, and then also the recitation of precepts day, and then all the way begin from the first day to the 9th day of the Tibetan calendar. There are the 10 days, and then from the 10th to the 15th, 15th to the 25th, within every month, the Tibetan monastics would hand in their phones with a gap of 5 days and or 10 days. The whole class would turn in their cell phones. And if they were to use a second phone, then their class would get demerited for that particular action. We are a center that engages diligently in study, contemplation, and practice, and we have our rules. So we really need to implement those rules to protect our container as a Sangha, as a center. And for the Chinese Sangha, we will use 7 days as a set of a period of time that we would turn in our cell phones. Now let's take a look at 37 practices of Bodhisattva. Having understood that a clear seeing, fully endowed with peaceful resting, completely destroys negative emotions, it is the practice of bodhisattvas to cultivate a meditative concentration that truly transcends the four formless realms. Clear seeing is the realization of emptiness based on a fully qualified and perfect peaceful rest that dwells as a one-pointed mind focusing on virtue. It completely destroys all negative emotions, such as ignorance, the source of samsara, by eliminating them at their very root. Having understood this, one trains in meditative concentration endowed with extraordinary assistance, great compassion, which brings an end to the extreme of peace, and a clear seeing, which makes an end to the extreme of existence, etc. Thereby, the mundane serenities of the four formless realms and so forth, in which peaceful resting is predominant, will truly be transcended. On one hand, it is the Vipassana's practice of wisdom, and on the other, it is the great compassion. And such compassion is not within an extreme. It is not like the Shravakas practice that holds on to the extreme of peace. Rather, it brings an end to the extreme of peace, and clear seeing, which makes an end to the extreme of existence. To train in such meditative concentration, which are condensed into 3 kinds, is the practice whereby bodhisattvas train in the paramita of meditative concentration. Moreover, from Ornament of Sutra speaks of mind resting inwardly. Inwardly is really important, rather than our mind being distracted outwardly, getting distracted by our cell phones and so forth. Indeed, if we do not practice, or rather if we were just to pay lip service to the Dharma, it is not going to be very helpful. Some Khenpos, teachers, in fact, they would pay great attention to practice since a very young age, and that would be quite meaningful. We need to not only study the theories, we need to engage in actual practice. I think from that perspective, we really need to study from the Han Chinese masters, the Chan masters. They would engage in a great deal of meditation. So they're quite experienced that way, and in that way they would develop their insights. So we have to study that, and we have to engage in actual meditation, actual practice of meditation. In entering into the middle way, it says that meditative concentration characterized by composure, hence a one-pointed virtuous state of mind that remains undistracted by other objects, is the essence of meditative concentration. Remaining in meditative equipoise, which is the meditative concentration of producing pliancy in body and mind, is the first kind of meditative concentration, that of blissful abiding during the present life. The meditative concentration that accomplishes ordinary qualities such as foreknowledges and emancipations. There are the 8 kinds of emancipations. This is the second quality, and then the third one is that accomplishing wholesome deeds for the benefit of sentient beings. This is the meditative concentration of benefiting sentient beings, and these 3 are distinguished by their different functions. But there are also other ways of making distinctions, such as in the ornament of the Sutra Shastra, as well as entering the way of the Bodhisattvas. There are different ways of categorize the meditative concentration. So over here, this kind of categorization is still a little bit different. As to the faults of not cultivating meditative concentration, the following is said: in the way of the Bodhisattva, a person whose mind is completely distracted falls into the fangs of the chasm of negative emotions. So falls into the fangs. That means if one were to be biting into or with the fangs, with the teeth, then you would lose your life to such distraction. Within the depiction of the samsara, if you remember, the Lord of Death sits right on top of that depiction, and into that in that picture was depicted over there right on top, and then the whole wheel of the 6 realms sits right in his mouth. It is just like that. All the sentient beings within the 6 realm samsara is impermanent. The wheel is turned by the 12 dependent origination, and within the picture, the center of it is the representation of greed, anger, and ignorance. So if our mind is distracted, then it simply will fall into the fangs of afflictions, and we will not be able to attain liberation. For that reason, I really hope all of us would be able to give up using cell phones beginning from Monday, beginning from, in fact, today at 12 a.m. And we will engage in a group meditation practice, this retreat of meditative concentration practice, where we will cut off all kinds of distractions, especially cell phone and internet. If we were simply speaking of Dharma, it is of no use. We need to truly adopt those teachings into our practice. I have taught extensively on the 5 treatises and the teachings on esoteric and exoteric teachings. I sometimes would contemplate that it is wonderful that I have the fortune to receive those teachings in front of Pongso Rinpoche. But on the other hand, if I were to have the time to engage in actual practice and retreat for a period of time under the guidance of Pongso Rinpoche, and if I were to develop genuine insights within myself, then I think the benefits I can provide to all of you would be much better. But of course, now it's just a wishful thinking. I have contemplated and practiced upon the impermanence of life and the suffering of samsara, though I have not attained high level of realization in those, and sometimes I'm not very contented with, I'm not quite content with my own behavior and actions. But I think it is better to start now than ever. If we don't start now, then we're simply no difference than the lay practitioners. We are simply upholding a form of the monastics. Now, to continue over here, it says that letting the elephant-like mind run wild will bring us miseries in deepest hell. Well, if we were to be trampled by the elephant, then we would lose our life for this lifetime, but not going to harm us. This is not going to harm us for the future lifetimes. But if our mind were to be like elephant-like, then it would bring us misery in the deepest hell for lifetimes. That is why we need to learn to tame this mind. In the letter to a friend, it says, without meditative concentration, there will be no knowledge. If our mind is not quiet and calm, then there is no way for us to develop the understanding of no self or the insight of no self. We have to then first uphold the practice of meditation. In terms of the merits of upholding the meditative concentration, according to the compendium training, it states in the authentic and exact meditative composure, understanding will arise. Thus, the Buddha has taught. If we were to truly engage in the practice of meditative concentration, then the genuine insights would arise, and it is no longer as shallow as words. It is not that superficial anymore. According to the way of the Bodhisattva, having understood that clear seeing, fully endowed with peaceful resting, completely destroys all negative emotions. Peaceful resting must be sought first. That is why we need to first practice calm abiding, the clear seeing. That is why we need to turn off our computers, our cell phones. Otherwise, we would constantly get distracted. Nowadays, there are lots of apps such as TikTok and those kinds of short video apps. I don't have those, but I've noticed that people who have those kinds of apps on their phones, hours and hours would pass by without them noticing it. That would simply lead to one squandering one's life, especially for a person who seeks liberation. Hence, based on peaceful resting in which the mind remains in equanimity, clear seeing that authentically sees the natural state will rise, and the negative emotions will thereby be abandoned. This demonstrates the sequence, the benefits of peace resting and clear seeing. Concerning the statement transcends the 4 formless realms, the following is found in the ornament of sutras. It says, likewise, meditative concentration is not the formless realms. The root of all the merits and the qualities of bodhisattvas began from the samadhi generated from meditative concentration. So if any of you sitting here listening to this class want to have any or gain any insights or success in practice. Of course, you can engage in chanting and circumambulating, but the root of any insights is really meditative concentration. You have to first practice calm abiding, to practice resting in that peaceful state and calm state. Unlike some of the newcomers, at first when they come here, they get really excited. I really don't feel that it is necessary for the Buddhists to welcome the others, like seeing a celebrity over here. It is not an appropriate behavior for the Buddhists. We need to have right mindfulness. Even if you were to meet some grand master, some great Lama, if you were to hold some katak and have some cash that you want to offer to that Lama in your hand, you don't need to run after them or block their ways. It is not the most important. It is not the proper action. What's most important is your own steady contemplation and practice. Without such, even if you were to ask the greatest Lama to bless you, it is not useful. The Lamas are not there for you to praise or to get their blessings from, and then you're taken care of. In fact, the Lamas had already practiced through the path and had gained the insights, and then they can, through their own practice and insights, give you guidance, pass down the guidance to you, so that you can also practice the same way, so that you can rest in that state of mind, or recognize the nature of affliction and recognize the nature of your own mind. This is the function of a Lama. On one hand, it is wonderful that you're so enthusiastic and very welcoming and very warm towards a teacher. On the other, I think you need to recognize that to rely on a spiritual teacher is to rely on your own nature of mind. This is stated by Longchenpa. So we need to recognize that this is the proper way of relying on the teacher. On top of that, some of the people who tend to be very or overly enthusiastic towards the Lama at the very beginning, at a later stage of their practice, they can very much become a person that would slander the Lama. So studying the Dharma or becoming a Buddhist is not the same as someone who study and practice the Dharma. There is still a great gap between those kinds of different followers. It is wonderful for you to receive the blessings from the three jewels. That is really wonderful. But on the other hand, you need to recognize that you need to develop the true faith. There are 6 types of faith according to Longchenpa. So I hope the beginners, the Buddhists, especially the female practitioners, somehow the female practitioners tend to exhibit their enthusiasm more openly. I hope that you don't overly exhibit your enthusiasm. And I hope that your faith towards the teacher do not retrogress. I hope that you can develop the faith towards truth rather than faith towards some ideal. We need to practice wisdom so that we can eradicate the afflictions within our mind stream. This is the most important. As their main basis for accomplishing good qualities, Bodhisattvas generally practice meditative absorption, comprised of the 9 levels of meditative concentration. In particular, they practice the meditative absorption of the 4th meditative concentration, in which the aspects of abidance and clarity are in balance. They're in equanimity. This is their extraordinary way of practicing meditative absorption. Lord Atisha said the following: since human life runs out on the path of distraction, now is the time when you should remain in meditative composure. And the supreme meditative concentration is an unfabricated mind. Gompawa said the root of meditative concentration is a place of solitude. I think for beginners especially, you really need to find a place of solitude, a quiet place for you to practice meditation. Potowa said the following: among people, there are many pleasures and lots of things to do. If you get easily distracted with all kinds of chores and all kinds of distractions, and you would not be able to practice virtuous deeds. I think it is very much related to a person's disposition. There are people who naturally don't like those kinds of things, and the people who naturally tend to get lured by those. Therefore, virtuous practice does not happen, and therefore, too, meditative concentration will not occur if you were to get very much distracted by those pleasures, and if you were to have lots of graspings towards the external phenomena. The great masters, meditative masters, the great teachers, the great practitioners, they are of the kind of people who are quite content with whatever they have. They live a simple life. They don't have a high level of requirement of the place that they live or the things that they would eat. They don't have lots of graspings to that. If they were to have a high requirement to those, then they would not be able to practice meditation. They would not be able to practice concentration at all, even for half an hour. Within our group, for people with lots of afflictions, especially negativity, simply practice half an hour or 1 hour a day is not going to help you in terms of your progress on the path. At least you need to practice 6 hours. Then slowly you would be able to advance on the path. If you were to engage in 3 sessions of meditation, and each session takes about 2 hours, this would be better for you. If you were to simply sit for 5 minutes, 2 minutes, this is a simple relaxation. But if you were to truly work on your afflictions and change your mind stream, where you had accumulated the great amount of afflictions, that is like the rushed river, then simply sitting for a few minutes is not going to help at all. Potowa continued to say that when not possessing the vows and samayas, one's being will be impure, and therefore, although one meditates, no meditative absorption will arise. For people with rather an impure mind, who generates wrong views towards the teacher, towards the fellow practitioners, towards the environment, then it is just like a filthy container. Whatever kinds of pure nectar that you would pour into this container is not going to make the food pure, because the container is contaminated. So you have to make sure that you have a pure vows and pure samayas. Karakpa said, in the mind of a beginner, there is clarity but no stability. Don't let mind be carried away by the wind of thoughts. Bind it with the rope of mindfulness. Whenever the wind of dualistic thoughts were to blow over, the insights would be dispersed. So you have to use the rope of mindfulness to stabilize it. These statements show that it is reasonable to cultivate a meditative absorption, and that the supreme meditative absorption is an unfabricated mind. They also demonstrate that in order to meditate, one must rely on the many types of peaceful rest, and that one must therefore adhere to solitude, give up busyness, happiness and rely on few desires and on contentment while observing pure discipline. It is taught that during the main part of practice, it is very important to rely on mindfulness. We need to practice according to the instructions that we receive, especially at the very beginning. We need to rely on the guidance given by the teacher, given by the text, and all of these kinds of practice would help us to benefit sentient beings. So you have to engage in practice yourself to gain insight. Otherwise, if we were to simply listen to the teachings of human body is difficult to gain and then not practicing it is not helpful. Rather, there are people who actually engage in actual practice. They would slowly understand it, and then tears would flow from their eyes. And whenever they think of the teacher, of the qualities of a teacher, they would tear up. And whenever they think of the suffering of samsara, they would tear up. So that the mind that is so wild would slowly be tamed, be pliable and workable, and then the merit of the virtuous qualities would be able to prosper, would be able to blossom. Without practicing in such a way, then your mind stream would be simply in drought. There is no way for it to blossom at all. For the mundane beings, we have lots of negativities. We have so much afflictions, though that you had listened to lots of teachings and probably dozens of classes and probably read many volumes of books. But if your mind stream has not changed, then you would not be able to benefit anybody. That is why the teachings over here says that we need to meditate, and then we need to rely on the many types of peaceful resting, and then practice at a solitude place and give up all kinds of business chores and rely on few desires and contentment, and then observe pure discipline. It is taught that during the main part of practice, it is very important to rely on mindfulness. So we need to be very much content with whatever we have, because desire is something that would distract us. If you can practice contentment, rely on few desires, and then observe pure precepts, let it be Pratimoksha vow or the Bodhisattva vow, then within your mind stream you would be able to give rise to genuine meditative realization. Moreover, from Gyaltse Tokme himself, from Rinpoche himself, he said that since without meditative concentration, the innate nature will not be seen. Practice a meditative absorption free of the attributes of conceptuality. There are only very few that would be able to see the true nature of their mind right after peace abiding. Usually there is the teaching of the precept and then meditation and then wisdom. So first you have to observe precepts, and then you can develop meditation, meditative absorption, and then wisdom. Tomorrow we'll talk about wisdom. But before wisdom, we have to have meditation. Before meditation, you have to observe pure precepts. Otherwise, there is no way for you to progress. He then continued to say that all appearances are of one's mind. The mind itself is primordially free of all extremes without it being distracted by the attributes of preserver and preserved. To remain one-pointedly is the authentic meditative concentration. Thus is aspired and trained in the three kinds of meditative concentration and practiced accordingly. At the time of chanting the aspiration of Samadabhadra, the lay practitioners as well as the monastics, all the male practitioners can come to the shrine hall. And after we completed our chanting of the aspiration of Samadabhadra, then I am asking all the female practitioners, other than maybe a few camels and a few of the supervisors and the management team can stay here. Other than that, the rest of the female practitioners are asked to leave, and so that you can go back and engage in your regular study and practice sessions afterwards. I would like to ask of you to be quiet, to keep the orders of the whole Sangha, the orders of the shrine hall, abide with the regulations over here. All of the Han Chinese as well as the Tibetan supervisors over here, all of the staff members would be there to maintain the proper order of the Sangha. So if you were to run around or make loud noises, your pictures would be taken and then be reported to your managing khenpos and khenmos. And you would be asked to, or there would be certain punishments and certain kinds of consequences to your behavior. Currently, we have two groups that's running over here. One is the female. All the female practitioners belong to the Larong Monastery, and then the male practitioners belong to the Buddhist Institute. Each of the groups are under the management of about over 100 supervisors as well as the staff members. But the females and the male practitioners are completely separated in terms of the management as well as all aspects of staying here. Pontsog Rinpoche used to say that even at times of building and mending houses, the male and female practitioners should not work together. Whenever we have even the meetings, the female and male practitioners are usually held separately, or even if there are meetings where female and male practitioners were to be in the same meeting, the male practitioners would travel separately than the female. So today, our particular post-class activity is only for the male practitioners. I am asking all the female practitioners to go back to your routine and go back to your study and contemplation at your own place. Tomorrow, our class would continue as usual, but right now, I am asking of you to comply with the rules and comply with the regulations of the monastery. Of the Sangha. So these are the two things I would like to emphasize today. First one is that after 12 a.m. today, we will begin our meditation practice, meditation retreat. So turn off your phone. And the second is that you need to only focus on yourself and not looking for the faults of the others and not be engaged in the things that's out of your control or out of your sphere. Sometimes there are things that we need to do for the benefit of sentient beings, and I can only say this much, and I hope that you can understand. Other than a few of the practitioners that's really necessary to be present over here, other than that, then the rest of you should not interfere with our activities. Talking about interference, I would like to specifically address on noises. There are people who kept on calling and kept on talking out loud or yelling others' names. And whenever I hear those kinds of noise, it feels as if I'm going to have heart arrhythmia. So in Larungar right now, maybe because we have too many people here, maybe because we don't have enough bodhicitta, maybe we don't have that much of the mind to benefit the others, it could be an obstacle for all of us, or it could create obstacles for us. Nowadays, it seems that people like to run around on the outside and most of the time with a cell phone in their hand to take photos and shooting videos. We're really not sure what those kinds of people are doing. Are they vlogging or are they spying? We don't really know. You need to remember that the reason that you're being here is to either read, to study, to contemplate the Dharma, or to practice. Everyone should be very quiet. I went to lots of the Theravada centers, and I noticed that the Theravada practitioners are very quiet, very peaceful. I remember that at the time of having the World Buddhist Youth Symposium, all of the Theravada monastics are very quiet, but all the Tibetan Buddhists, the lay practitioners, are rather quite loud, and I sometimes would feel quite embarrassed about those kinds of behavior. So I hope whomsoever or whichsoever great lamas were to be here in the restaurant, in the hotel, in the restaurant, wherever, or at the hospital or the clinic, I hope you do not treat that teacher as if you were to see an alien. Don't get overly enthusiastic of seeing them. I noticed that people would peek through the windows and peek through the gaps of doors so that they can see those teachers, and I don't think those kinds of behaviors are proper. You need to be calm and quiet. Do not have those kinds of so-called special activities or behavior. Be like a human and act normally. Whenever people exhibit those special behaviors, I would make a mental note to myself. So you need to be careful of all of those kinds of behavior and be very mindful of your own actions. Now let us chant the aspiration of Samadhabhadra, and after that female practitioners can exit. Zhibum tsulen zhuwa zhuru